He almost rode past her. The thought haunted him even as he pulled the reins hard and slid from the saddle. One more second of stubborn focus on getting home, one more breath of frozen air, and the shape beside the road would have stayed just that. A shape, not a life fading in the cold. She did not cry out, she did not wave, she only shivered, curled in on herself, as if the night were trying to erase her. And in that moment, Jonah Mercer understood something that would follow him the rest of his life. Some choices do not announce themselves. They wait quietly. And then, they change everything. The wind tore across the plains of northern Texas, sharp and merciless. Jonah's fingers burned as he knelt, the leather of his gloves stiff with ice. He touched her shoulder. It felt too light, too fragile. "Ma'am," he said, low and steady. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened slowly, gray, pale as winter sky. Her lips trembled, blue with cold, but she nodded once. That was enough. Jonah shrugged off his heavy coat without thinking. The wool had cost him dearly. Firewood had cost him more. Winter always did. Still, he wrapped the coat around her shoulders and lifted her up, surprised by how little she weighed. She made no protest, only leaned into him, shaking. "My place isn't far," he said, though it was farther than he liked to admit. "I'll get you warm." He set her in front of him on the saddle and urged his horse forward, careful on the frozen ground. The night closed in fast. The sky darkened to bruised purple, the wind howling like something alive. Jonah bent over her, shielding her as best he could, praying he had not come too late. His ranch finally appeared out of the dark. One small house. One barn. Nothing fancy, just stubborn survival carved out of hard land. Inside, the cold clung to the walls. Jonah set her in the chair and went straight for the woodpile by the hearth. He hesitated for half a heartbeat. The stack was smaller than it should have been. January was not done yet. Then he fed the fire anyway. Flames caught, bright and hungry. Warmth spread slowly. The woman watched him, silent, eyes reflecting firelight. "I need to check my stock," Jonah said, grabbing a lighter jacket. "You stay here. There's a blanket on the bed." She nodded again. Outside, the cold punished him for giving up his coat. He worked fast. Hay for the cattle. Water broken free of ice. Chickens gathered and shut in tight. His hands went numb. His breath came in harsh clouds. When he stepped back inside, heat wrapped around him like a blessing. The fire crackled. The woman sat on the floor now, closer to the flames, wrapped in his coat and the blanket. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice was gentle, worn. "You saved my life." Jonah rubbed his hands together. Anyone would have done the same. She looked at him then, really looked. Not everyone. He did not argue. He set water to boil and poured coffee grounds into a tin pot. The smell filled the room, simple, comforting. He cooked what he had, beans, a bit of salt pork, nothing special. They ate on the floor near the fire, the wind rattling the shutters outside. "What were you doing out there?" he asked. "My name is Eliza Hale," she said after a moment. "I was traveling south. The stage broke down. I thought I could walk ahead." Jonah shook his head. "This cold kills quick." "I know that now." She studied him over the rim of her cup. "You live out here alone?" He nodded. 5 years now. "That's a long time." "It is." When the meal was done, Jonah cleared the plates. "You should take the bed." "I'll sleep here." Eliza frowned. "I won't take what little you have left." Quote, "It's not little. It is to you." They stood there, tired and quiet, the fire snapping between them. "The bed is wide enough," she said gently. "We can keep our distance." Jonah's ears warmed. "I don't think that's proper." She smiled faintly. "You carried me out of a storm and gave me your firewood." Proper already left. Quote, Exhaustion won. They banked the fire and lay down, careful, backs turned. Jonah stared at the wall, aware of her breathing, steady now, alive. "Mr. Mercer," she whispered. "Yes. I hope someday I can repay your kindness." "You already have," he said. "You're alive." Sleep came slow. Morning arrived, pale and quiet. Jonah woke alone. Eliza stood by the window, light brushing her face. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I was given another chance." They rode out after breakfast, back toward where he had found her. No stage, no tracks. In town, they learned the coach had passed through the night before. Eliza would have to wait days for another. The hotel was full. Jonah heard himself speak before thinking. "She can stay at my place." Eliza looked at him, surprised. "It's only a few days," he added, "and it's warm." She searched his face, then nodded. "Only if I help." Back at the ranch, she kept her word. She cleaned, cooked, worked beside him without complaint. Laughter crept into the quiet spaces of his days. That night, as they lay in the dark again, Eliza spoke softly. "Some people believe kindness never goes unnoticed." Jonah turned slightly. "By who?" "The world," she said. "By the land itself." He smiled into the darkness, not knowing why her words made his chest feel full. Outside, the wind finally rested, and something unseen began to listen. Morning settled gently over the ranch, pale and quiet, as if the land itself were catching its breath after the storm. Frost clung to the ground. The sky held no threat now, only a soft winter light that made everything feel fragile and new. Jonah rose early, careful not to wake Eliza. He pulled on his boots and stepped outside. The cold was still sharp, but it no longer felt cruel. His cattle stirred in the barn. Alive. Waiting. That alone felt like a small victory. When he finished his chores and returned to the house, the smell of coffee met him at the door. Eliza stood by the stove, his old pan in her hands. Her hair was braided loosely, still damp from washing. She wore the same thin dress, now mended at the hem with careful stitches. "I hope you don't mind," she said. "I thought I should earn my keep." Jonah shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." "Still," she replied, pouring coffee, "I like being useful." They ate together in the quiet sunlight stretching across the table. It felt strange, right, too right for something so temporary. Later, they rode back toward town to ask about the next stage. The road felt shorter than it had before. In Williamsburg, the hotel keeper confirmed it would be 3 days before another coach passed through. 3 days. The word echoed in Jonah's chest. There was no room at the hotel, not even a corner worth offering. When Jonah suggested she stay at the ranch, Eliza hesitated only a moment before agreeing. "I don't scare easy," she said softly, "but I don't like being alone." "Neither do I," he replied, surprised by his honesty. The days that followed found a rhythm neither of them named. Jonah worked the land. Eliza worked beside him when she could, or inside the house when the cold grew too sharp. She swept floors he had stopped noticing. She organized shelves he had never bothered with. She cooked meals that tasted like care. They talked in pieces. Small things first. She told him about her parents gone too soon, about leaving Louisiana with hope packed in a single bag, about teaching children and loving books more than parties. Jonah told her about Missouri, about brothers who stayed, about land that fought him every step, about nights when the wind howled and he wondered if stubbornness was bravery or foolishness. On the second night, they repaired a fence together. Jonah hammered while Eliza held the boards steady, her hands sure despite the cold. "You've done this before," he said. "No," she replied. "But most work is just watching closely." He smiled at that. That evening, she cooked stew that filled the house with warmth and memory. They ate slowly, both aware of how quickly time was moving. "You'll be leaving soon," Jonah said quietly. Eliza nodded. "Yes." The word sat heavy between them. After supper, she stood by the fire, thoughtful. "My grandmother used to tell stories," she said, "about how kindness leaves marks we can't see." Jonah leaned against the table. "What kind of stories?" "Old ones. About land remembering how it's treated. About goodness calling good things back to itself." He listened, unsure why her voice held his attention so firmly. She believed that when someone helps another without expecting reward, Eliza continued, the world takes notice. Jonah gave a small chuckle. Sounds like superstition. Maybe, she said, or maybe it's just another way of naming hope. That night, sleep came easier. Their presence felt familiar now, comforting, dangerous in its ease. On the third morning, Jonah woke with a strange ache in his chest. Eliza was already up, packing her small bag. The stage would arrive by noon. They rode into town together, slower this time. Neither rushed. When the coach appeared, dust rising behind it, Jonah felt the moment settle like weight on his shoulders. Eliza turned to him. "Thank you," she said. "For everything." He nodded, unable to trust his voice. She hesitated, then reached for his hand. "Before I go, there's something I'd like to do." Jonah frowned gently. "You don't owe me." "I know," she said. "This isn't payment." She led him a short distance away, toward the edge of the road where the earth lay bare and quiet. She closed her eyes and spoke softly, words low and measured, older than the wind. Jonah felt a strange stillness settle around them. A hush. When she finished, she opened her eyes and smiled. "There, now the world knows." He swallowed. "What did you do?" "I gave thanks," she said simply. Then she climbed into the stage and was gone. Jonah stood until the dust settled, until the road emptied, until the silence pressed in again. Back at the ranch, the house felt larger, emptier. He worked harder than usual, trying to outrun the hollow feeling she left behind. A week passed. Then one morning, Jonah found water bubbling up near the barn. Clear, cold, alive. He knelt beside it, heart pounding. And for the first time since the storm, he remembered her words. The world takes notice. Jonah stood over the water for a long time, unsure what to do with his hands. It bubbled steadily from the ground near the barn, clear as glass, cutting a narrow path through the frozen soil. He had walked this land for years. He knew every rise and dip. There had never been water there before, not even after the heaviest rains. He knelt and cupped some in his palm, cold, sweet, clean. "Well," he murmured, half to himself, "I'll be damned." He told himself it was chance, a hidden vein finally breaking through. Late winter thaws did strange things. Still, as the days passed, the stream did not fade. It grew. His cattle found it on their own, crowding around the new water, drinking deep. Their ribs showed less. Their eyes looked brighter. Spring arrived quietly that year. Jonah planted as he always did, not expecting much. The land had disappointed him before. Yet within days, green pushed through the soil faster than it ever had. Rows filled in thick and strong. His wheat stood taller than his fence posts by early summer. Vegetables crowded his small garden until he had to give some away. Neighbors noticed. They rode over under polite excuses, checking fences, asking about the weather. Their eyes lingered on the fields, on the cattle. "You doing something different, Jonah?" one asked. Jonah shook his head. "Just working." By late spring, his herd doubled. Calves survived that never should have. Chickens laid more eggs than he could carry. Even his old horse moved with new life, ears forward, step light. At night, Jonah sat on the porch and stared at the stars, Eliza's words drifting back to him whether he invited them or not. The world takes notice. He did not like thinking about it. Belief felt dangerous. Disappointment hurt less when you expected it. Summer passed, then fall. The ranch changed shape under his hands. He hired help. Good men grateful for steady work. He fixed the roof, dug a proper well, though the spring never slowed. Money came easier than it ever had. Still, the house stayed quiet. 6 months after Eliza left, Jonah rode into town for supplies. The general store buzzed with talk. His name followed him between shelves. Mrs. Crowley leaned over the counter, eyes bright. "You heard the news?" Jonah adjusted his hat. "Depends which news." "There's a woman asking about you," she said. Came in on yesterday's stage. Gray eyes, dark hair, real polite. The room tilted. Asking about me, Jonah asked. That's right. Hotels sent her your way. Jonah did not wait for change. He mounted and rode hard, heart hammering, dust flying behind him. She stood by the spring when he arrived, just as she had months before. Thinner now, tired, but smiling. Hello, Jonah, Eliza said. He stopped a few feet away, afraid to move too fast. What are you doing here? She gestured around them. The water, the fields, the cattle grazing beyond. I had to see if it worked. His voice came rough. It did. She nodded, relief softening her face. Good. He swallowed. Why come back? Her smile faded. San Antonio didn't work out. Neither did anywhere else. She hesitated. And I missed you. The words hit harder than any blow. I missed you too, Jonah said. Every day. Tears shone in her eyes. I didn't mean to burden you again. He closed the distance between them and took her hands. You're not a burden. Stay. She looked at him, hope and fear tangled together. Stay how? Stay here, he said, with me. Silence stretched. Then she nodded. They married. 3 weeks later, the town filled the church. Curiosity turned to smiles. Eliza wore a dress she made herself. Jonah had never seen anything more beautiful. Life settled into something deep and steady. They worked side by side. Eliza kept the books. Jonah worked the land. Laughter returned to the house. Warmth lingered long after the fire burned down. The blessing never faded. Years passed. Children came. A son with Jonah's quiet strength. A daughter with Eliza's eyes. The ranch grew. Prosperity followed them like a faithful dog. On quiet evenings, they sat by the spring, watching their children play. You ever regret it? Jonah asked once, leaving everything else. Eliza smiled. No, I found home. They grew older together, slower, softer, but never less sure. When Eliza passed, peacefully, Jonah felt the world pause. The land stayed green. The water kept running. The blessing held. He joined her 2 years later, a scrap of her dress folded in his hand. They buried them on the hill overlooking the fields. The spring still flows, and the land still remembers. Life did not slow after the wedding. If anything, it gained weight and purpose, like soil finally fed after years of drought. Jonah woke each morning beside Eliza with a sense of grounding he had never known. The house no longer felt like a shelter he survived in. It felt lived in, claimed. Eliza brought order without demanding it. She kept accounts neatly, stretching money further than Jonah thought possible. She planned meals, saved scraps, made do without complaint. When spring rains came, she stood beside him, watching the fields drink deeply, her hand warm in his. You did this, Jonah said once, nodding toward the green horizon. Eliza shook her head. You did. I only noticed you. Their first child came the following autumn, a son, strong lungs, dark hair. Jonah held him with hands that had wrestled cattle and split wood, trembling now under the weight of something far more precious. They named him Samuel. The land seemed to celebrate with them. Crops grew heavier, cattle multiplied. The spring never faltered, even through dry summers when neighboring wells ran thin. Word traveled. Men rode from miles away to see the water, to ask questions, to study Jonah's methods. He answered honestly. Hard work, care, respect for the land. Some nodded, others squinted, searching for secrets. Eliza listened from the porch, a quiet smile playing at her lips. Their daughter arrived 2 years later. Graceful, gray-eyed. They named her Ruth. The ranch expanded. Jonah bought adjoining land when it came up for sale. Built a larger barn. Hired more hands. He paid them fairly. Fed them well. Treated them like neighbors, not tools. Eliza made the house a place people lingered. Coffee always hot. Bread always fresh. Children learned letters at her table while their parents worked the fields. You've turned this place into more than a ranch, Jonah told her one night. She smiled. I turned it into a home. Years folded into each other, seasons marked by planting and harvest, by birthdays and quiet losses, by laughter echoing off barn walls. Jonah aged. His hair silvered, his back stiffened. But his spirit stayed firm. Eliza stayed his anchor. Even as time traced lines across her face, her eyes held the same light he had seen by the fire that first night. On their 20th anniversary, Jonah took her north into the hills. They watched the sun sink together, silence comfortable between them. "I never told you," Jonah said, "but that night I almost didn't stop." Eliza's fingers tightened around his. "But you did." "Yes, that's what matters." They returned to the ranch to find their children growing into themselves. Samuel took to horses. Ruth showed a sharp mind for numbers. "You taught them well," Jonah said. Eliza shook her head. "We did." The ranch thrived into Jonah's later years. When he finally stepped back, Samuel took over. Ruth left to study but returned often, her heart tied to the land. Jonah spent his mornings walking the fields, drinking from the spring, feeling the weight of a life well lived. When Eliza passed, the world dimmed. But it did not break. Jonah spoke to his grandchildren about her often. About kindness, about noticing those in need, about stopping when it mattered. When he joined her, the land did not mourn with drought or fire. It stayed generous, faithful. The blessing lived on, not in magic, but in memory, in love, in the simple choice to stop for a stranger in the cold. Time has a way of softening sharp edges. Years after Jonah stepped back from the daily work of the ranch, he still woke before sunrise. Habit stayed long after need. He would sit on the porch with a tin cup of coffee, watching the land stretch and breathe as light crept across it. The spring still ran clear. Children's voices carried from the house now, grandchildren. Their laughter bounced off the barn walls the way Samuel's once had. Jonah smiled at the sound, even when his joints ached and his hands shook slightly with age. Samuel ran the ranch with steady confidence. He had Jonah's patience and Eliza's quiet thoughtfulness. He listened more than he spoke. He treated men fairly. He never took the land for granted. Ruth had returned too, bringing new ideas and sharp numbers. She kept the books, just as her mother once had, and saw patterns Jonah never would have noticed. Profits grew, but waste shrank. The ranch became not just prosperous, but strong. Jonah watched it all with a deep, settled pride. Sometimes, in the quiet hours, he would walk down to the spring alone. He liked to sit on the smooth rock near the water's edge, letting the sound fill the silence. He spoke to Eliza there, not out loud, just in his heart. "I hope you can see this. I hope you know how much good you set in motion." He remembered her laugh, soft, unexpected. The way she had looked at the land as if it were listening. When his great-grandchildren came along, the story was told again. About the storm, about the stranger, about the firewood. The children listened wide-eyed, sitting close together, shivering even in summer, as if the cold of that night still lingered. "Was she magic?" one asked. Jonah smiled. "She was kind. Sometimes that's the same thing." As the years passed, Jonah moved more slowly. Samuel insisted he stop working altogether. Ruth scolded him gently when he overdid it. "You've earned rest," she said. Jonah only nodded. Rest felt strange after a lifetime of motion. On a warm spring evening, Jonah sat on the porch while the family gathered inside for supper. The sky burned gold and red, the same colors as that long-ago sunset when he rode home through snow. He felt tired, not the sharp kind, the full kind. Samuel found him later, still sitting there, eyes closed, face peaceful. They buried Jonah beside Eliza on the hill overlooking the spring. The whole valley seemed to come. Ranch hands, neighbors, families Jonah had helped without thinking much of it at the time. Stories were shared, laughter mixed with tears. Samuel stood by the grave long after others left. "I'll take care of it," he said quietly. "All of it." And he did. Years turned, then decades. The ranch passed from Samuel to his children, from them to theirs. The land remained generous. The spring never dried. Even in years of drought, water ran steady and cool. People still came to see it. Some asked how such good fortune lasted so long. The answer was always the same. Respect the land, care for people, stop when it matters. Quote, "The graves on the hill became a place of quiet gathering. Flowers grew there without tending, birds nested nearby, children were taught to speak softly when they passed. The story changed a little with each telling, but the heart of it stayed the same. A man chose kindness when it would have been easier not to. A woman answered kindness with gratitude. And the land remembered. Long after names faded from ledgers, the blessing remained. Not written, not spoken again, just lived. On certain evenings, when the light hit the water just right, some swore they could feel it. A warmth, a hush. As if the world itself paused, honoring an old promise. The promise that goodness does not vanish. Long after Jonah Mercer's name stopped appearing on ledgers and deeds, the land still spoke of him. It spoke in green fields that never fully failed, in cattle born strong even in lean years, in water that ran clear when others ran dry. The Mercer Ranch became something people pointed to, not just for its size or success, but for the way it felt, calm, fair, grounded, as if the soil itself trusted the hands that worked it. Samuel grew old on that land, just as his father had. He walked with a slower step in his later years, but his eyes stayed sharp. He taught his children what Jonah had taught him. Work hard, be fair, never pass by someone in need. Ruth's children visited often from the city, drawn back by something they could not name. Even as adults, they found themselves standing by the spring, listening to the water, feeling steadied in a way no place else offered. They all knew the story, not as a fairy tale, as a truth, a cold night, a choice, a life redirected. On anniversaries, family members would gather on the hillside where Jonah and Eliza rested. They brought flowers, sometimes food, sometimes nothing at all, just presence. Children were told to listen. "Close your eyes," an elder would say. "Hear the water." That's where it started. And they would. Years turned into generations. The ranch stayed in the family, passed hand to hand, heart to heart. Even when times grew difficult, even when drought threatened, something always held. Neighbors noticed. They spoke of luck, of fortune, of blessings. But the Mercer family spoke of something else. Kindness lasts, they would say, longer than we think. On one quiet evening, decades after Jonah's passing, a young boy wandered down to the spring alone. He knelt and dipped his fingers into the water, cool, clear, alive. He did not know all the details yet. Not fully, but he felt it. The sense that this place remembered. That choices mattered. That goodness, once set in motion, did not disappear. It settled into the bones of things, into land, into families, into time itself. When he returned to the house, his grandmother asked where he had been. "By the spring," he said. "It feels kind." She smiled, eyes soft. "That's because it is." As the sun slipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, the ranch settled into its evening rhythm. Cattle lowed. Wind moved through grass. Water whispered over stone. 2 graves on the hill caught the last light. Side by side. A man who stopped. A woman who gave thanks. A love that shaped generations. The blessing still lived. Not because of words spoken once in a quiet room, but because of a choice made in the cold. Because someone saw another human being and did not look away. And that more than anything else, was why the land continued to prosper.